Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Ever read Alice in Wonderland? You know, the part where Alice nibbles on a cookie and suddenly grows taller than a house, or sips a drink and shrinks down to the size of a mouse? Fun in the story, right? Well, imagine if that happened in real life, but instead of whimsical Wonderland magic, it is your brain playing dirty tricks on you. That is pretty much what happens with Alice in Wonderland syndrome. People with this condition experience wild, distorted views of the world around them. Objects suddenly look way bigger or way smaller than they actually are. Your chair will seem like it has grown into a skyscraper, or your hands could shrink down until they feel like you are a toddler trying to hold a phone. This bizarre perception shift usually hits kids, and luckily, tends to fade as they grow up. But when it is happening, life feels like one of those weird dreams where you can't tell if you are a giant or a mouse, just without the cool, talking cat bonus. So, what causes it? Well, the jury's still out, but experts think it is related to the parts of the brain responsible for processing sensory information, like vision and space perception, getting a bit scrambled. Unfortunately, there is no magic cure, no potion labeled "drink me" for its treatment. But the symptoms can be managed if they are related to migraines or epilepsy. If the syndrome is tied to headaches, doctors usually prescribe migraine medications to keep it in check. But really, for most kids, AIWS is one of those weird phases that passes. Capgras delusion. Imagine you walk into your house after a long day. Everything looks normal, except for one small problem. The person you're living with is not them. You're sure of it. It looks like them, talks like them, but deep down, you know it is some sort of imposter. Welcome to the world of Capgras delusion. People with Capgras delusion are convinced that someone close to them, like a spouse or family member, has been replaced by a very convincing lookalike. You could try to explain, "No, honey, it is really me," all day long, but nothing will shake their belief. Their brain sees the person, but the emotional connection is gone. So it freaks out and comes up with a wild explanation. "That is not my wife. That is an alien, or a robot, or I don't know, but it is not her." It is believed to happen because the brain can't link emotional feelings with recognizing the face. So it is like a glitch in the matrix. Capgras delusion tends to show up in people with underlying neurological or psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia, dementia, or after traumatic brain injury. Fixing it is not simple. Treatment focuses on managing the underlying condition, whether it is antipsychotic medications for schizophrenia or cognitive therapy for brain injury patients. In some cases, building trust with caregivers and loved ones can help reduce the paranoia, though it is not an easy road. Cotard delusion. All right, here's one that really cranks up the creep factor. Suppose you are walking around fully convinced that you are dead. Not in an "I feel like death after a night out" kind of way, but literally believing you no longer exist. That is Cotard delusion. People with this condition think they are missing vital organs, rotting from the inside out, or that they simply don't exist anymore, despite the fact they are up, walking, and breathing like the rest of us. Cotard delusion usually shows up alongside severe depression or psychosis, and it is triggered by major trauma or neurological conditions. You can imagine how unsettling it would be to feel alive, but firmly believe you are a walking corpse. Treatment for this mental disorder involves heavy-duty interventions like antidepressants, antipsychotics, and, in more extreme cases, electroconvulsive therapy. It is like jump-starting the brain back to reality. It also shows just how deeply intertwined mental and physical health is, because when your mind is convinced you are dead, no amount of "hey, you're fine" is going to cut it. Alien hand syndrome. This is something straight out of a horror movie. Alien hand syndrome. Picture this. You're just chilling, maybe trying to enjoy a snack or watch TV, and suddenly your hand decides to go rogue. It starts grabbing things, slapping you in the face, or just waving around without your permission, like it has a mind of its own. Welcome to alien hand syndrome, where one of your limbs basically turns into a rebellious teenager who refuses to listen to you. Usually, it is some kind of neurological event, like a stroke or brain surgery, that messes with the connection between the two halves of your brain. The signals get all scrambled, and suddenly, your hand is going off on its own personal mission. Treatment is all about trying to retrain your brain, kind of like disciplining a rebellious pet. Occupational therapy and cognitive exercises are used to bring that hand back under control. So, with enough patience and practice, you can, hopefully, convince your hand to behave and stop acting like it is auditioning for a role in a sci-fi flick. Exploding head syndrome. Sounds terrifying, right? But don't worry, it is not as bad as it sounds. No actual heads are harmed in the making of this syndrome. Instead, it is more like your brain is playing sound effects just to mess with you. Imagine lying in bed, just starting to drift off, when suddenly, bam! You hear a loud explosion or a crashing noise. You jump up, heart racing, but do you know what? Nothing is broken, no bombs went off, and your house is still perfectly fine. It is all in your head. This weird phenomenon happens more than you would think, usually caused by stress, exhaustion, or sleep disorders. It is like your brain misfires during that transition into sleep, making you hear loud, imaginary noises. No actual harm is done, but it is definitely enough to leave you wide awake and questioning reality. Thankfully, exploding head syndrome can be managed by dialing back your stress levels, fixing up your sleep habits, or in more serious cases, using medications like antidepressants to quiet those overactive neurons. Because honestly, no one wants to go to bed feeling like they are in a Michael Bay movie every night. Paris syndrome. Say you have been dreaming about Paris your whole life. The Eiffel Tower sparkling in the distance, cute little cafes on every corner, love in the air. Then you finally make it to the City of Lights, only to find traffic jams, packed tourist spots, and a waiter who is not exactly thrilled with your French pronunciation. Boom! Bonjour, Paris syndrome. This condition mostly affects tourists, especially from Japan, where Paris is painted as the ultimate fairy tale destination. But when reality smacks them in the face with crowded streets, noise, and the occasional rude interaction, the disappointment is so intense that some tourists experience nausea, anxiety, dizziness, and in rare cases, hallucinations. Yes, Paris can break your heart that badly. The cure is pretty simple, actually. A bit of rest, a comforting phone call to a friendly voice at the embassy, and a reminder that, sadly, no city is as perfect as it looks on Instagram. Sometimes the reality is just a little messier than those romantic postcards make it seem. Frigoli delusion. Now, if Capgras delusion has you thinking your loved ones are imposters, then let me introduce you to Capgras's overly paranoid cousin, Frigoli delusion. This one is a doozy. Imagine walking around thinking that everyone you meet is actually the same person, just in different disguises. The barista at your favorite cafe? Yup, definitely your high school gym teacher in a wig. Your Uber driver? Clearly your boss in sunglasses. People with Frigoli delusion are convinced that this one person, usually someone from their past, is stalking them everywhere, just switching identities like some kind of low-budget spy movie. It is commonly linked to conditions like schizophrenia or brain injuries, where the brain's facial recognition system decides to go on vacation and just makes everything up as it goes along. The solution is similar to other delusions: antipsychotic meds and therapy to bring things back to reality. Who has got the time or energy to be that many people all at once? Even spies have limits. Diogenes syndrome. This is where extreme self-neglect meets the most intense level of hoarding you have ever seen. If you think you know a messy person, Diogenes syndrome takes it to a whole new level. Imagine homes filled to the brim with newspapers, old food, random junk, and absolutely zero interest in cleaning any of it up. This syndrome typically shows up in older adults and is often linked to dementia or severe mental illness. It is like their connection to society just disappears, and they isolate themselves, letting everything, both their home and their self-care, completely fall apart. Treatment can be a bit of a challenge because, as you might guess, people with Diogenes syndrome aren't too keen on accepting help. It takes some very patient social workers and therapists to slowly build trust and start chipping away at the layers of clutter, both physical and emotional. It is not just about cleaning up the house. It is about tackling the deeper issues like depression or cognitive decline. Baby steps, as they say. Body integrity identity disorder. This one is quite challenging and a little unsettling. Say, for example, you're looking at your own leg, arm, or even just a finger, and something feels off. Not like a bad hair day, but more like this part of my body doesn't belong to me. People with BIID feel an overwhelming disconnect from a specific part of their body, almost as if it is a foreign object that just showed up one day. The feeling is so intense that some people go to extreme lengths, like seeking out amputations to feel whole. Doctors and researchers believe this can be tied to a mismatch in how the brain maps out the body. It is like your brain is trying to run an old GPS system that can't quite locate all your limbs correctly. Therapy is the first go-to for treatment, but it is tough to talk someone out of something they feel so deeply in their bones, or in this case, about their bones. There's also a big ethical debate going on in the medical world about how to handle cases where people want to amputate a perfectly healthy limb just to feel more at ease with their own bodies. Stendhal syndrome. You know that feeling when you're staring at an absolutely gorgeous painting, or you're standing in front of a breathtaking landscape, and suddenly you are overwhelmed? Maybe your heart races, you feel lightheaded, and for a split second, you wonder if you're about to faint. Well, crank that sensation up to 11, and you have got Stendhal syndrome. People with this condition get so overwhelmed by beauty, whether it is art, nature, or even architecture, that they experience dizziness, fainting, or sometimes even hallucinations. Yep, they basically get beauty-induced brain fog. It is like their senses go into overdrive, and their brain just waves a little white flag, begging for a break. It is thought to be due to a mix of emotional sensitivity and sensory overload. Imagine taking in a bit too much of the good stuff all at once. While it is not dangerous, it can definitely freak you out. It is commonly just some rest and getting out of the beauty blast zone. So, if you ever feel woozy after an art museum tour, it is probably not because of the art, unless you are channeling your inner Stendhal. Thank you for sticking through till the end. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like button. Perhaps, if you're interested in more videos like this one, hit the subscribe and notification bell to always know when the new video's up. It's free and you can always change your mind.